Oh, hi again. I finally got around to playing Outer Wilds DLC Echoes of the Eye, and man do I have to talk about it. There's lots to talk about, but again, I have to start the video with don't watch if you haven't played the DLC or the base game. Okay, so now that's out of the way, let's talk about it. The presentation of this DLC is amazing. It sets the mood perfectly with the deep space satellite taking a photo of a planet that shouldn't exist, giving an eerie feeling of the whole thing. Flying closer to it, I was expecting something along the lines of an exoplanet or quantum, but the exoplanet wouldn't have worked because the object appears to be stationary. Flying into the cloaking field reveals a dark, foreboding ship, with only one light being the hangar. The hangar itself tells me that this is not Nomai. Going deeper into the ship, I learned the mechanisms are controlled with light. Flipping the switch drops the player into the river and reveals a fucking halo array that this unknown race just casually built. So it's not a halo array, but the ring spins and uses rotational force to create gravity. Nonetheless, it's still very cool. Once I'm on the river, I get hit with the River soundtrack, and it just puts the icing on the figurative reveal cake. At this point, we're at the discovery and exploration phase. I'll skip over the stuff that's not so interesting, because we all just want to get to the juicy part, but in a few sentences, I stumble into rundown houses with these eerie-looking owl guys, discover some nice murals that they've created, and eventually learn how to work their projectors, learning about how they're looking for the eye's signal. As I go along, I find a strange-looking bell. The ship's log calls it a vault. After exploring the 3 towns, I find the final resting place of the Alks. I'm convinced there's more to this. There's another dimension, but I'm not sure how to get to it. I attempt to catch a marshmallow on fire and use it to light the lantern, but it doesn't work. Eventually, I learn that you can just sleep at the fire and it'll light. Are entombing themselves into a sleep? Welcome to the alternate universe or simulation or whatever term you or I might use to describe this. We know it's a simulation, but be quiet, the story isn't over yet. Exploring this new world reveals it's similar to the strange ship that we came from, but there are living creatures here, gathering at the house across the river singing some kind of song. I don't remember the music being that spooky. It sounds almost mournful and tragic. Visiting this house will cause the Owls to blow out my lantern and send me back to the real world. Hello? Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, that's... Exploring more, I find that I can travel between zones in the simulation. Things in the simulation can influence things in the real world. Using this to discover burned pictures. These owls are making it difficult to find out what's in the vault. Anyways, fast forwarding a bit, I learn about the tape burnings. I discover that each burning location has an extra tape that will tell me how to get to the hidden rooms in the simulation. After some spooky, scary, Metal Gear style sections, I discover the archives. Jeez. So that's what they did with all the records. Thankfully, I don't have to watch all these slides. I just get about 2 to 3 tapes per archive, each of which tells me a way to break the simulation, which is needed in order to extinguish the pillars locking the vault. After getting red-pilled and breaking the simulation twice, I am tasked with crossing this bridge, which I fail to do for a whole 2 hours at the dismay of my 2 Twitch viewers. With all that done, I'm able to enter the vault, which is bigger on the inside. I'm not sure what I'll find. Show yourself. I know you're here. I'm missing a man. Oh, it is a pretty... Well... a friendly Alk. This Alk then shows me what he did to become a prisoner. Then I show them what I know of what happened to them, their ship, what the Nomai were up to, and their fate, about the Hearthians and the player character. Brother, we are all going to die. Our newly met friend goes outside, quote-unquote, for the first time in who knows how long. Catching up with the Alk to find that he left behind his vision stick, with a vision of the two of us sailing off into the sunset. Once I find the way into the water because someone pointed out there's footprints, jumping in results in a title screen and waking back up at Tipper Hearth. Now that we got the summarization out of the way, let's dive more into it. The first thing I want to point out is these Alks are dickheads. Like, I understand your entire species ruined their home planet to discover this mysterious symbol that destroys the universe periodically, but what does putting yourself into stasis to recreate what you had in the past going to do? Alright, hear me out. If the human race was put into a limited space with the same few people for eternity, we'd get bored, probably kill each other, or commit flame extinction after just a few months to a year. Maybe a few years if we're lucky. I don't know, maybe that's just a human race, human nature kind of thing, where we just lose our marbles if we didn't have anything to do. I mean, like, even the most bitter of people would probably not make it, like, 100 years. It also appears that in order for them to add things to the simulation, it has to come from an outside source, like how they added the Vault. So they can't just make more simulation. On top of the fact that they're responsible for the Eye of the Universe stopping its signal, which most likely resulted in the Nomai vessel failing to accurately jump to the Eye. This theory is not backed by any scientific data. However, the Eye suppressor was active while the crashed Nomai were alive, which resulted in the Ash Twin project, making it possible for us to even explore and be here. Take for example how they burned their history and anything reminiscent of the Eye. They then created a simulation of their homeworld and died living in it. They also created the Eye signal suppressor to give themselves more time in this fantasy world that they've created, unintentionally screwing over the Nomai and intentionally screwing over themselves. But there was one Alk that didn't. It awoke and disabled the suppressor, and what did the crowd do? They locked the dissonant owl up in a massive, triple-locked, double-layered prison in both the real world and the fake world, knowing full well that when they die in the real world, they continue in the fake one, dooming this owl to an eternal prison sentence until either the universe ends or the fire goes out somehow. Which all makes sense when discussing the whole point of the story. My general interpretation of the story is that the past is the past. No matter how much you or I want to go back to it, we could be filled with hatred or become bitter, and in our attempts, what we do to get back there is just going to screw over ourselves and other people. Okay, backpedaling a little bit to the whole simulation idea. I believe they had no long-term planning when it comes to the ramifications of the simulation. Unless their goal was to create their home and use it for a tomb forever, then they succeeded, I guess. But they left no one behind to maintain the ship, or to ensure that the eye was contained, or to look for a new suitable home somewhere else. I mean, looking back at their history, it makes sense that they do something like this because they were so rash, destroying their own world to get to the eye. I think Soviet Womble had a good interpretation of my questions here with this comment that he left. Speaking of dams, the construction of their ship is something I do want to talk about. The ship itself is massive. I wouldn't doubt the whole population of Owlks were meant to be transported on this thing. It's somewhere between the Hearthians' technology and the Nomai's technology, but the Nomai had somehow created artificial gravity on their vessel, while when they were crash-landed, they used the gravity crystals. The Owls took the centripetal force approach, using water as some sort of power bank to help keep the whole ship rotating. My working theory is that they used some form of engine, say a combustion engine, to start the rotation of the ring, added the amount of force they needed to create artificial gravity, and the water would act as almost a battery source by flowing around the ring, and it could be regulated by the dam. This theory then puts even more importance on the dam being maintained and functional, since it's almost the heart of the ship. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to it. There's one more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up this DLC. It's the music. At first, I didn't think there was enough music present in the DLC. I felt there was a lot of dead air compared to the base game, but that's on purpose. The music arrives when it needs to, and it conveys the mood perfectly. From an eerie ambient music in the simulation, to a somber chanting at the house, to a hopeful exchange between you and the prisoner. It does what it needs to do, and I can't really fault it for that. The track Departure doesn't need to hit as hard as it does, but I'm glad it does. Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye is a DLC that adds new elements to the game without interfering with the base game. It being isolated on the Stranger, taking place in both half the real world and half a simulation, gives it way more playtime than I was expecting. The style that they used for the Stranger and its inhabitants, as well as the change in gameplay style, were welcome, as they changed enough to feel distinct from the base game without straying too far away from what makes Outer Wilds Outer Wilds. The story was strong once I pieced it together, and I really like how they made this species bitter and angry about the end of the universe, as well as justifying it. As it was something that I pointed out in my Outer Wilds ending summary, that the people who play at the campfire aren't mad at the end, they're just happy to play one last time, the Owlks took a different path. The only thing I dislike about the DLC is the restriction of movement, with the 1.3 times gravity, the loss of the ship while you're inside the Stranger itself, and the loss of the jetpack in the simulation. I know why they did this, because if I was just able to jetpack away from the Owlks, it would trivialize the stealth and chase sections. But it really did feel bad when I got stuck on something and I was walking around or boating around and it took forever to get from point A to point B. And it was just I don't know why I dislike it compared to when I got stuck on Brittle Hollow, and that was a good experience, but this one was a bad experience. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I wasn't progressing when I got stuck, and then it just felt bad walking around for 22 minutes, 44 minutes, however long. My final verdict for Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye is a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, like how I felt the base game was, but it's strong enough on its own to be its own little game without being attached to the base game itself. The story's impact wasn't as brutal as the base game, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be that way. But it is strong enough to stick around in my brain for years to come. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the developers Mobius Digital and Annapurna Interactive for both making Outer Wilds and Echoes of the Eye. I'll see you next time I get fixated on something. Stay curious out there.